Konnichiwa. Everyone, I hope your day is going well. I'll tell you about the story of Gian's mother disaster. Let's get started. It was a typical afternoon in the Nobi household. Nobita was at his desk, trying to finish his homework, when suddenly a loud, booming voice echoed from outside. Nobita! Come out here and play some basketball! John's voice roared from the street. Nobita, who had been desperately trying to focus on his math problems, groaned. He had no intention of playing basketball, especially since Gian always insisted on being the center of attention and shouting commands. I can't, John! Nobita called out from his window. I have homework to finish. But John wasn't going to take no for an answer. No excuses, Nobita. You're coming to play whether you like it or not. Before Nobita could protest again, there was a loud knock on his door. Nobita's mother, Tamako, answered, only to be greeted by a flustered Gian standing on their doorstep. Mrs. Nobi, please tell Nobita to come outside and play. John pleaded dramatically, his face twisted into a serious expression. He's being a coward again. Tamako, always eager to keep the peace, sighed and turned to Nobita. Nobita, your friend Gian wants you to play outside. You've been inside all day. Go have some fun for a change. Nobita's protest was cut off as his mother shooed him outside. Go on, it's only for a little while. Feeling like he had no choice, Nobita reluctantly followed Gian outside to the basketball court. But things quickly took a turn for the worse. The disaster strikes. As soon as they reached the court, Nobita could tell something was off. Gian's usual loud and boastful demeanor was replaced by a strange quietness. Gian, what's wrong? Nobita asked cautiously. Nothing's wrong. Let's just play, all right? Gian grumbled, pushing a basketball into Nobita's hands. The game began, but it wasn't long before Nobita noticed that something seemed off about Gian's shooting technique. Instead of his usual attempts at dunking, Gian was missing every shot by miles. What's going on with you today, Gian? Nobita asked, feeling confused. Just, let's keep playing, okay? Gian snapped, growing visibly frustrated. But as the game continued, it became clear that something was wrong. Gian's movements were sluggish, and he kept rubbing his eyes as if something was bothering him. Suddenly, Gian let out a loud groan and collapsed onto the ground, clutching his stomach. Ugh, I don't feel so good. Nobita panicked. Gian, what's happening? Gian groaned again. I don't know. I feel really weird. My stomach hurts. And my head is spinning. Just as Gian began to roll on the ground in discomfort, a loud voice boomed from the street. Gian, where are you? It was Gian's mother, Mrs. Takeshita. She marched over to the basketball court with a stern look on her face. What did I tell you about playing basketball in the middle of the afternoon? You were supposed to help me with the laundry. Gian, still writhing on the ground, looked up at his mother in disbelief. Mom, I'm not feeling well, Mrs. Takeshita, always stern, looked at her son and then back at Nobita. What are you two doing out here? Gian, you were supposed to help me with the chores at home, but instead, you're playing basketball again? John, too sick to argue, mumbled something about how he'd been dragged outside. Mrs. Takeshita, unimpressed, crossed her arms and started scolding him. I don't care if you don't feel well. You need to learn responsibility. Now get up and come home to help me with the laundry. But before Gian could even sit up, Nobita stepped in. Mrs. Takeshita, I think he really is sick. He's not faking it. John, still groaning, nodded weakly. Yeah, Mom. I'm really not feeling good. Mrs. Takeshita frowned and finally knelt beside her son. Well, maybe you should have thought about that before running around all afternoon. Now you've made yourself sick. Nobita felt a little bad for his friend, but he also knew that Mrs. Takeshita was a bit too hard on John sometimes. Maybe you should just let him rest for a while, Mrs. Takeshita. He looks like he needs a break. But Mrs. Takeshita wasn't having any of it. She grabbed John by the arm and started pulling him up. No excuses. You're coming with me right now to help with the laundry. You're not getting out of it just because you're feeling a little dizzy. Gian, still feeling miserable, reluctantly got up and followed his mother as she dragged him toward their house. The aftermath. Later that day, Nobita returned home, feeling a little sorry for Gian, who was probably being forced to do chores even though he wasn't well. Nobita's mother, Tamako, gave him a knowing look as he walked in. "I told you to go outside and have fun," she said with a smile. "But it looks like you got more than you bargained for." Nobita chuckled nervously. "Yeah, but I feel bad for John. I don't think he's really sick. I think his mom just overworks him sometimes." Tamako laughed. "Well, it's not easy being John's mom. She means well, but she can be a little too tough on him." As Nobita sat down to finish his homework, he couldn't help but think about John's mom. He realized that sometimes, even though Gian acted tough, he was just like any other kid, needing a break from time to time. That day, Nobita learned a valuable lesson about the balance between responsibility and rest, and about how important it was to show some understanding when people were under pressure, even if they didn't always show it. It's important to be responsible, but it's also essential to know when to take a break and show understanding toward others, especially when they're going through tough moments. Do you remember any precious memory with your mother? Let us know in the comments below. Did you enjoy this chaotic adventure? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Doraemon short stories. You are kind. Thank you for your support. Sayonara.